So in the panel discussion, you mentioned that your company has come out of the valley of death. What is needed for other companies to cross that bridge?
Well, one of the key aspects of us crossing over is effectively finding a customer and fitting within a regulatory framework that brings us value. So for example, as soon as you find a customer, it changes the dynamics of determining what's a good quality product, where value is found from a research and development perspective to a third-party perspective, where a customer actually uses it. So if a customer calls you and says it's not right or it needs better quality, then it brings that reality to you that it's no longer hypothetical, it's actually practical. And the ability to actually satisfy a customer's demand is one of the aspects that brings you out of that valley of death, especially as it relates to an economic value equation. When a customer confirms the value equation associated with your product and associated with what you do, there's another confirmatory aspect of bringing you out of that valley. And so that's what we've enjoyed. The final aspect, of course, is production, the ability to have production and economies of scale by which you can provide product to customers at an economic value meeting their quality specifications. So that's where I figure you're kind of on that plateau after the valley of death to be able to meet those objectives.
Is it difficult or easy to learn about new markets where your products are going to be sold?
New markets are always a challenge because they not only represent maybe a slight difference in your product and how you produce it, but also the regulatory environment and its performance environment in those new marketplaces. So for the most part, it requires a broader team. It's a longer sales cycle, but hopefully you can leverage off of the existing products, existing markets by which to then expand into I guess a synergistic market with that product. But if you're changing, like for example, we have a heating fuel product that's a completely different market than a refinery feedstock market. So those two markets are almost polar opposites, where we're dealing with a direct customer at one side and then we're dealing with an intermediary product on the other side. Those are challenges for sure.
In general, what is needed to support a faster development and introduction of new technologies for this bioeconomy?
I think credibility is one aspect. Credibility, as I mentioned, I consider that we have a foundational type of product and process. As we build credibility in its operating performance and in the nature of the product, I think that product itself becomes the platform for growth, as there's additional derivatives that can be extracted from it, additional products and applications that can be used for it. I think that will help. So as those foundational building blocks of bioproducts is formed, I think you'll see that growth happen much quicker than starting back in the lab at the earlier stages and then working on the foundation of not only process but also product.
One problem that was discussed in the panel was the need for new capital. Was that difficult or easy for you to get the amount of capital to do the development?
Yeah, new capital is always a challenge, especially for new products and new business lines, where traditional markets may perceive that the risk is much too high, especially where end customers aren't necessarily represented by long-term contracts. So fundamentally, the Canadian government and the Quebec government have been key partners in de-risking our first plants in order to bring commercial product to the market, whereby that funding gap can be filled by others as we go to the next facility as we expand, because the markets are secure, the contracts are secure, and the application is well defined. So I think that's where we'll see the future, but again, we required support with federal and provincial governments to help us through this initial gap.
Thank you very much.
All right.